Whether your beer is in a bottle, can, or glass, kick back and relax. It's Better on Draft.
We are live. It is episode 49 of the Michigan Craft Beer series of Better on Draft. My name is Ken. Thank you so much for joining us. I truly appreciate it. We are apologizing for the delay, a little technical difficulties, but we got it all ready to go. So let's go around and see what everybody is drinking, starting with Wendy. Wendy, what do you got over there?
I have a Holmes Brewing Company Bloomer West Coast Pilsner.
All right. Rob, what do you have?
Well, I am in Indiana, and we don't have Holmes here. So instead, I have a Combs Baltic Porter from Poland.
All right. And for myself, I do have, I believe this is, and I don't have the bottle just because the bottle was huge. And again, I was telling you in the pre-show, my fiance confiscated it from me. I believe this is the Cool Ship Creek from Holmes Brewing, which is a nice, kind of like a maroon color. I believe it's a lambic or a sour, but let me introduce our guest. He can tell us a little bit about that beer as well as a little bit about himself. Nick, welcome to the show. Why don't you tell everyone about yourself and, of course, the beer that I'm drinking?
Yeah, how's it going, guys? Thanks for having me on. I appreciate the invite. So that's Cool Ship Creek 2024. It's the second vintage that we've done. And it's actually a lambic, and we do brew it as traditionally as we can in Ann Arbor. So we do have like a big stainless open top Cool Ship container that we brew hot wort directly into every year in like November. And then whatever is kind of in the air floats into it overnight as it cools down. And then we just put it into oak wine vessels and let it go for like 1 to 3 years. And then in that version, we re-ferment it on Michigan cherries, mostly Balaton cherries from up north. And we did it once. We really liked it. So we're going to try to make it an annual thing. It's, we don't do a ton of mixed culture sour, but that's one that we are kind of all about trying to do every single year now.
Well, let's get a question in for everyone to judge you. What is up north to you?
Traverse City. I lived in Traverse City before I moved down here, so I'd call Traverse. I'm not from Michigan, but that's my version of up north.
Where are you from?
I grew up in New Jersey, like North Jersey, like 12 miles outside of Manhattan.
Was there a big beer scene in New Jersey that kind of got you into beer, or have you been in Michigan for your more like plus 21 age life?
I graduated college and then I was moved. I went to school in Rhode Island and then I moved back to Jersey for a few years. So when I was in New Jersey, no, there was not a big craft beer scene. It was before the East Coast had kind of blown up. So there was 8 breweries in the state of Michigan when I left. I was interning for like the second oldest brewery in New Jersey. When I came out to Michigan was definitely, substantially more breweries, much more well known for beer, craft beer especially. That New Jersey, it's weird. New Jersey's definitely changed, and they're close to like 150 breweries at this point. But just in the amount of time since I've gone, they've gone from 8 to over 100.
What was the genesis of wanting to open up Holmes? Like, what made you want to start your own brewery?
So, man, that's a long answer. There's a lot of things. I was brewing at Right Brain Brewery up in Traverse City, Michigan. I was up there for 4 years and had kind of gotten that experience, but really wanted to get in at the ground floor. I had joined Right Brain when they were like 7 years into it by the time I got there. So it was a very good experience. There's a lot of production brewing and repetition and kind of learning efficiency. But I was really interested in starting something small scale from scratch and kind of doing something different. So I had gotten in touch with Tommy Kennedy, who was the original owner and still is the owner. and we kind of just talked over the phone for a little bit and really vibed. And I went down to visit to see Ann Arbor. I've only seen Ann Arbor like once or twice before I moved down here. Um, and he showed me the building. It was kind of a dilapidated old building that it needed a lot of repair, but it was just a cool space. Ann Arbor is a cool town. It just felt right. There was a lot of breweries in Michigan, but we kind of had our ear to the ground of what was going on the East Coast and the West Coast with some of the newer stuff coming into craft beer. So we kind of hit and opened right during that, like pre things getting really crazy with hazy IPA in the Midwest. It was already like a well-known thing on the East Coast, but it we kind of opened right in the middle of that, and it was just like a very fun time to be in craft beer.
So the decision for Ann Arbor was more on Tommy's side, or was that just kind of what you guys saw in your first option?
He's alumni from Michigan. He then kind of moved back and was living University of Michigan, then was moved back, was living in Ann Arbor. And I just grew up in a very densely populated city situation. So when I moved here, I was kind of like, I think I'm really only going to want to live in like a Detroit, a Grand Rapids, or an Ann Arbor. So when I came down and met him, it's like, this is a brand new thing. He needs a head brewer. He's not in the brewing industry. He doesn't have, hard takes on what the beer needs to be. And he's very open-minded and thinks, likes modern design and wants to do things differently. And that's just kind of like everything I could have wanted if I was opening a brewery. So it just, it worked out pretty perfectly. And it's, it's just harder and harder to get real estate and open businesses in Ann Arbor. So the opportunity to open a brewery in Ann Arbor was just like, you couldn't pass that up.
What you talked about Tommy having like a very open mind regarding the beer styles. Like, what's your, I guess, theory on craft beer? Like, does things need to be true to style? Do you think it's more fun to play with different flavors and profiles? Like, what's your thoughts in the brewery system?
Things change as you get older too. And when I first got in the industry in my mid to late 20s to now, almost being 40, it changes so much. I think I have a really good appreciation for more now than ever for classic European styles, but that's just like not what Holmes was ever going to be. We wanted to do stuff that was creative or a slightly creative take on a thing. I'm not saying you've got to like go and get Tootsie Rolls and put them in a German Pilsner or anything crazy like that, but like trying to find creative ways to do existing styles. I think very rarely, if ever, we're going to do a very just straight up Czech beer or straight up German beer. It might be traditional yeast and malts and all that, but like maybe we're going to throw in a little bit of an American hop we're excited about in the Boyle or in the Whirlpool, or a New Zealand and Southern Hemisphere hop that we're excited about. It's just like, what can you take that's already existing and make it interesting without it being kitschy or over the top or just like attention grabbing for the sake of attention grabbing. And there's definitely certain things we do that like have some crazy ingredients, but at the end of the day, it always has to make sense. It can't just be like throw crazy shit in there to be able to tell everybody how crazy it is. And it's got to really be more about, does the beer make sense? Does the flavor profile make sense?
I'm going to pass it off to Wendy after this question, but how, as a business owner, as a brewer, how do you manage what makes sense for the guest versus what makes sense in your head versus what makes sense in the market? Like, how are you balancing all of that to try to, because one, you have to make money, but two, you have to make good beer. So how do you approach that?
Dang, that's a good question. I think there's a little bit of like understanding where the culture is going, right? Like craft beer right now is very different than it was 5 years ago, 4 years ago, or 3 years ago, even. So understanding that, like, you can, it's okay to like understand what's going on in the culture in craft beer, what people are like looking for right now, but not feel like you're kind of selling your soul either. I mean, we opened up as a brewery that was very open to change and very open to feedback and not getting stuck on anything and not saying this is the one way to do it. So I think it's easier for us in that way. Um, but it's just like, okay, if Pilsners are what people are really starting to lean towards, or like there's a little bit of like with Gen Z kind of moving back towards like the thing your dad drank in the 90s kind of feel where they want it like the American light lager or the Budweiser or the Coors Light. So okay, so how could we make a light beer that we're still excited about? And we try to, I mean, an example of that is we make like a beer under our one of our brands called Simo. It's called Pool Beer, and it's a Pilsner, but it's, you know, we wanted to make it as like a hybrid Japanese rice lager slash Italian Pilsner. So it's a dry hopped Pilsner. It is brewed with rice, but then we also dry hop it with New Zealand Waimea. So those specific ingredients don't feel traditional at all, but the way we brew it is pretty traditional. So the base of that beer does feel familiar as like a, you know, a German lager or a lighter lager, but there's just other things there that kind of make it a little interesting. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I think it's like trying to make see what's going on in the market and trying to do things that you are still excited about that could potentially line up with what's happening out there.
Well, that answer led me to like 3 different questions.
All right, I love it.
So let's start with Simo. What is that exactly, and how did it come about?
Sure. So we've got a few brands. We definitely don't make things simple over on the Homes campus. We've got a few brands that we've opened over the past few years. So Simo is essentially Homes spelled back. Not essentially, it is Homes spelled backwards. Um, so the, you know, and that definitely like people are a little confused by that. But like what we're trying to do is do something different and it go in a different direction than what Holmes beers are, but we're not hiding the fact that this is a Holmes derived idea. So, you know, we started Holmes Brewery in 2017 with a restaurant. We opened a second location a few miles away called Holmes Campus that kind of has a production facility and a coffee roaster and cafe, a full, you know, kitchen and all that. And we but what the idea was that we weren't really going to distribute Holmes beer very much at all. um I tend to look at us more as a hospitality company than a brewery. You know, we're trying to create an experience with food, with our decor, with art, with music, with whatever we do, our front of house staff. So it's really like inviting people to come to our place and see what we've got going on. So in doing that, that allows us to really do things on the beer side that are not feasible in distribution because we have the ability to sell directly to the customer. You know, the price point makes it okay for us to spend an obnoxious amount of money on hops in a beer, or makes it possible for us to add 300 pounds of coconut to something. But as you guys might know, like in distribution, you need to really cut the price quite a bit to sell to a distributor. The distributor's got to mark it up to sell it to the retailer. The retailer's got to mark it up to sell it to the customer. So like those Holmes beers are just not viable out in the market. No one wants to spend $30 on a 4-pack at a liquor store or a bar or whatever it ends up being. So we kind of created Simo to do, how can we take these beers that are made at a lower price point and kind of put them through the Holmes filter and make them as good as we possibly can at a certain price point that is still accessible to like people that want to go get a 4-pack at a store or go to a bar in Detroit and get a pint of something or whatever it may be. So really the idea behind Simo is lighter ABV beers. The two that we have out right now are lager, Dutch Lunch, and Pool Beer, and we kind of are less concerned about promoting Simo as a brewery and more about promoting those separate brands as their own standalone thing. Um, so they're lower in ABV. They're both lagers. They're both semi-affordable, but like I said, like, can we use the creativity that we've kind of learned and sharpened through Holmes Brewery and apply them to those brands.
So I love everything that you just said about making it an experience. I personally have noticed exactly what you're talking about when I visit your brewery. Um, when you started out, did you expect to have like the following that you've grown? Because you kind of exploded there.
No, that's nice of you to say. No, I mean, no. I think it's very much a roll of the dice, and there's always like imposter syndrome, and like coming into this, I had some brewing experience, but I'm not from Michigan. I'm not part of I wasn't part of the scene, and you kind of think like, I think it's good, but I don't know if people are going to like it. We had a big part of, I think a big part of why we can kind of do what we do is we're very open to um, legitimate criticism and feedback. So even the year prior to us opening, I moved down to Michigan, or to Ann Arbor, before we opened, and I worked at a Tommy's house in his garage, and he kind of had this very like infamous poker game that would happen every Tuesday at his house in Ann Arbor. So there's people from like there was doctors coming, there was bartenders coming, there was police officers coming, like just like all kinds of people would show up to this thing. Michigan coaches for Michigan soccer team, all these different people, and there was a whole setup with a Google Doc and a draft system where they could drink for free, but they had to fill out a Google Doc on everything that they tried, and kind of be very open to how they felt about it. So there was a lot of honing before we opened, and I think that's something that a lot of people, whether it's restaurants or breweries or any kind of art, misses, is you work so hard on the product, and you're so close to the product that you're sure it's good, and when you hear other people give you feedback, it's like, well, they don't really understand what I'm doing, or they don't really get it. And like, we just we can't have that mentality. We don't really allow much for that mentality. Obviously there's always bickering back and forth between the brewery staff about how something should or shouldn't be done, or like they're wrong about an off flavor. But in general, like, I just have very little tolerance for anybody like not allowing for some kind of analyzation of feedback from whoever it is. That was a long-winded answer to your question, I think.
No, I think it was perfect. So of course we have to talk about Nucleate because I
Yeah.
think that has a lot to do with some of that following.
Yeah. You guys have been out to Nucleate, I'm guessing, right?
Yes.
Okay. No, all
I
right.
have
Well, we
not.
got to get you guys
Okay.
out this year.
My only Holmes beer that I have had though is a Nucleate that I got in a trade.
Okay, man, we got to get you some Holmes beer.
Yeah,
So
Nucleate has always come on like the weirdest weekends for me. And then I moved to Ypsilanti, and then 2020 happened, something about a disease, or I don't know what happened,
Sure.
but then I couldn't go out. Yeah. So it's always been like a struggle for me, but I plan on getting there this year. That's my goal.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. It's usually the first or second week of June. So Nucleate's our beer festival that we started doing really early on. It was definitely a very ambitious move with really next to no like recognition nationally. We were open for a year, and then we said, we're going to throw this beer festival. We're going to work with 3 Michigan breweries who are going to help us throw this thing. But outside of them, we're going to invite all out of state breweries, and mostly breweries that don't distribute, or certainly don't distribute to Michigan. So the idea behind it is like, there's just a lot of very well attended and well run Michigan only beer festivals through the Michigan Brewers Guild every year. There's Summerfest, there's Winterfest in Grand Rapids, there's UP Fall Fest and Detroit Fall Fest as well. So it wasn't, I think that people think that we don't want to invite Michigan breweries, when the thing is, like, we have a lot of great friends in the Michigan brewing scene that, like, if we invite one, we have to invite them all. So we originally started with Speciation, Transient, and Watermark, and they kind of helped with their network that they brewers they know and people we knew, we kind of all got together and invited a bunch of breweries to come out, and it's just like bringing one of those really special beer fests to Michigan was our idea. So we get Cantillon, Trey Fontaine, and Tilquin to send beer from Belgium, and then we're able to get just a lot of very, very good breweries nationally, and other half and Trillium has been out, and Lua and Mortalis comes out every year. We get a few of our friends up in Quebec, Meserem and Dubas, both out of Canada, come down along with a few Toronto breweries. So we usually get around 45 to 50 breweries, and they're just like, it's a fun community. The national beer fest scene, we get invited to theirs, so we get to travel a lot to New York or Miami, Colorado, California, all over the place to do their fests. And then there's a little bit of an understanding that we're going to need you to come out to Ann Arbor in June and have fun with us. And it's been awesome. Yeah, we do. It's a charity event that we do for the Ozone House, based out of Ypsilanti every year. We have a Nucleate beer that goes, with the purchase of the ticket every year, you get the bottle of Nucleate, which changes every year. It's been a collaboration with a different brewery every year. And we just try to do wacky stuff and, drop $500 for an ice luge at the Smooge table, or, get power generators so we can run a slushy machine out there, or whatever it might be. We try to just do fun stuff. It's a ton of work to do every year, but it gets a lot of great breweries out to help network with each other and give people in Michigan a chance to talk to some of these breweries from out of state or out of country that they might not usually get.
That is awesome. I love the idea of bringing in those that don't distribute to Michigan, just because I love to try beer from all over the place. So I think it's really cool that you bring them in so that people who can't travel get that opportunity. Before
Thanks.
I pass it on to Rob, I am just curious, can you think of a beer that you have had at Nucleate that really just surprised you, like that you can't stop thinking about, I guess?
Ooh, man, that's tough. This year we had Fidens out out of Albany, New York, and they've somehow managed to be a really hyped hazy brewery that's opened in the past 2 years. It's just like not the direction that the culture's going, but they're so good that they get a lot of attention. They had a beer called Triple Jasper, I think it was called, which was like a New Zealand hopped triple IPA that was crazy good. Imprint, who funny enough, we were in a lawsuit with Imprint over Smooge, and we just kind of worked it out and then invited them out to Nucleate, and they brought a beer that was made with like it was blue and it was made with heavy cream, and it was just like it was, I mean, obviously not something you're going to drink on a regular basis, but I was just like, it was literally like it was cream, it was dairy added to, it wasn't lactose. So I was just like, this is like surprising and something I've never seen before. So that one always kind of sticks out. I think, yeah, it's tough because there's so many good breweries. And North Park from San Diego are just very, very good at West Coast IPAs and West Coast Pilsners. So I really love anything that they bring. But everybody that comes to that fest is kind of a stud. Like there's really not bad beer that comes to that fest, and it's awesome that we get them to show up for it.
That cream-based beer sounds like one that would be impossible to distribute safely.
Yeah, I don't really get how they did it. I'm not sure myself. They make the Schmoojee, the SCHMOOJEE.
Okay, I remember this lawsuit or the
lawsuit.
Yeah. I remember that now because of that.
Yeah. Good times.
Yeah, right. It's good to be done with, right?
Yeah.
So kind of continuing on with the collaborations, I had seen as I was doing research that you did one with Northern Monk on their Patrons project, and I was just wondering how that came about and what you thought of that, and how that all worked out.
Geez, yeah, I'm trying to remember how we got invited to that. So there was a little period of time there before um, COVID that Northern Monk. So Northern Monk is in Leeds, England, and they would have Dark City was a fest that they did, and Green City or Hop City, I can't remember. But they had two fests a year, and they would basically rotate in and out different American breweries. So if you got the invite, it was like, oh, like this is exciting. Like you're one of the breweries that people are keeping an eye on. So we got an invite to go out to that with Speciation, um, and they just wanted to do a collab while we were out there. So we got to hang out in Leeds. It's one of the really amazing parts of the job that you just don't think about or think it's a possibility when you get into it. The amount of travel you get to do, especially pre-COVID. So yeah, we just got to go out and see Leeds, and it's pretty close to Maris Otter, which is, I don't know if you guys are familiar with or Thomas Fawcett. Um, Thomas Fawcett is a malt house in England that's been around for a really long time, over 100 years, and they make Maris Otter and a bunch of other malts. So we got to go see this crazy old malt house. It was just like being in a different world. Um, but yeah, that's how we ended up going out for the collab. We went out early to work with them on that.
That's pretty cool. Did you get to do any, I don't know, weird old English brewing techniques or anything as part of the collab that you
No, I
could
mean, you
bring
step
back?
into their brewing, it feels like an American brewery in there.
Yeah,
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 everything outside and around it is very old, but no, it was very recognizable to us.
nice. Are there other collaborations coming up that you are going to do, or some that you want to do?
Um, yeah, let me think. We brewed a stout with Dubas Canada out of Quebec. That's in barrels. We've got a collab we brewed with Omnipolo from Sweden. That's in barrels right now. We're dropping something with Mortalis. Um, Soon we've got Drecker out in North Dakota has just released an IPA with us. Um, I haven't done enough work uh, this year going into 2025 to set too much up, but hopefully kind of going back and doing stuff with some of our older friends. Horace is somebody we try to do something with once a year, once every other year from California, um, and then we like to kind of go back to our some of our original people that we worked with, Speciation and Transient. We got to do a collab with Transient this past year. That was really good. So yeah, a few things cooking up.
It sounds like you're a very social brewery that really gets around.
I think that's another part that has helped us a ton. Like Tommy's a really great networker and is a really personal guy and is really stressed early on that we get out and we talk to people. And it if there's a cheat code or a silver bullet to anything in brewing, it's the networking and talking to people and learning from other people as much as possible. We did a lot of that, and Nucleate is a huge part of that too. It's we invite people that we've become friends with. Mostly, we're not usually hitting up random breweries to come out for. It's really folks that we have relationships with, and it does make a huge difference in our knowledge base and what we're able to do because of it.
Yeah, and most of the breweries you have listed so far are known for doing experimental, on the edge, fun things. So it sounds like you all are kind of birds of a feather.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. There's like I said, there's definitely a bunch of breweries that kind of work together with beer festivals throughout the country. So I'll go to a fest and I'll see this, a bunch of the guys that I see a bunch of brewers from all over the country at least 3 or 4 times a year because we end up going to the same festivals and it's fun.
Nice. I was, scouring your Facebook, and it looks like you have just finished the Permanent Homes for Permanent Housing initiative, which I thought looked pretty cool. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, Permanent Homes is our like Halloween party every year. So we kind of started by working with Permanent Hangover. I don't know if you guys are aware of Permanent Hangover. They're like I don't really even know how to explain them. They're not a brewery, but they're like they make like clothing that's like very satirical and like kind of crass and like funny, and they're designers. So we worked with them to make a label called Permanent Homes a few years ago. And so it's a big, we call it a candy bar stout that we release every year before Christmas, and it's a big party and everybody dresses up. And this year we worked with Habitat for Humanity, so that every pour of stout that we poured for the event, we would donate money. So I'm kind of just hoping to grow that every year. That was this year was the first time we did it with them, and I'm hoping that an event that could just get bigger and bigger. We have live music come out for it. We have you know special stout tappings all day long, and a big beer release. Our bottle club members will come and line up at like 8 o'clock in the morning for a release that happens at 7 o'clock at night, and they're just hanging out there all day, and it's fun. It's a lot of fun.
The candy bar stout sounds like it would be kind of interesting. I may have to drive back up to Michigan. I just left. May have to go back up there and check this
Well,
stuff out.
we'll get you hooked up with that. Basically we pick a different candy bar every year to base it off of. So I think this year was a Heath bar. We found these. They're called Skor Bit, SKOR bits, I think, and they're just like toffee. So we added a lot of that, and toasted almond and vanilla to basically bourbon barrel aged stout. And that the ABV was around 15%, and it's sweet for sure. I mean, we're not saying it's not sweet. I think it's very big bodied, a lot of whiskey character, but it does taste like caramel and almond. It turned out really nice.
It sounds great.
Yeah, thanks.
With what was the genesis of Campus? You mentioned that you wanted to kind of do production over there. You wanted to do a little bit of SEMO. But what was like the reason why you opened up a second brewery nearly across the street from where you guys currently are?
So we opened in April of 2017, and then just like very clearly very quickly realized like this is not like we don't have capacity at that location. We kind of ran out of beer. We got very close a few times that first summer to running out of beer. We'd have like 3 beers on. So we kind of just said we needed to do something. So within 6 months of us opening, we had kind of closed on a new property down the street. We call it Homes Campus because it's got kind of multiple buildings on one property. And the original idea was just to have a production facility so that we could put bigger tanks in so that we were able to keep up, and then eventually get a canning line and all that. And then as we were kind of working on things and developing, it took a really long time because we had renters that kind of their lease had to end, and then started construction, and then COVID hit, and so everything was delayed. But eventually we ended up renovating the one building into Dozer Coffee Roasters, which is our sister company that we roast and coffee, and we have a cafe with a full menu. And then we also have a art gallery space, and then we have a full bar for homes there as well. And then we have a back building that we've kind of turned into an events and catering space. So we're growing that program and doing more events. And then it allows us to host our big events. So Permanent Homes was at Homes Campus. Our anniversary parties will be at Homes Campus. A lot of the big events, and then we'll host like random stuff like weddings, or Buick rented the space out to premiere new models of cars. We do all kinds of things at that property, but it was really out of necessity to make sure that we could try to keep up with production.
You mentioned a coffee roaster there. Obviously you're roasting your own coffee. Are you open early in the morning now, or is it a
Yeah, they open at 7 a.m. and they close at 5 p.m. So yeah, it's an all day thing there. It's a whole separate set of staff. We kind of intentionally did not make it like Homes Coffee or anything. We wanted it to be something that could stand on its own. And often people can't really buy into the idea that you're going to be good at a lot of things as a company. So, Homes is beer, beer and restaurant. Dozer is coffee. It's its own thing. Um, Different clientele too. We get a lot of like college students coming that have never even heard of Homes, um, and vice versa. We get Homes people coming out and never heard of Dozer. It's just a whole different thing.
Heading back to the brew pub itself, what was the reasoning behind your food menu? Because you have a massive, it looks like Korean food that's over there. What was the reason for the Korean food?
Yeah, that was another thing. As a differentiator, Tommy and I did a lot of traveling on the East Coast and West Coast before we opened, um, and seeing breweries. And there's people doing a lot of cool and different things. I think there's a time there where if you're a brewery, your food is probably going to be burgers and pizza, and there's nothing wrong with that, obviously. But with Tommy's connections, he had a buddy named No, and he owns a chain of restaurants in the area called No Thai, which is kind of like fast casual Thai food. I don't know if you guys have heard of No Thai before, but they kind of cater to the college kids, but it's really good Thai food. So he kind of came on. I think originally he wanted to do more American um, food, and I was like, man, like I think this is such an opportunity to do something different and interesting. Like nobody is doing it, things outside the box when it comes to food. So we kind of pushed him a little bit to do more Asian street food. So it's not specifically not specifically Korean, not specifically Thai. It kind of it evolves, and it touches on a bunch of different cultures. And there's definitely like some dishes that are just like bulgogi French fries. So it's bulgogi beef on top of French fries, or Thai chicken on top of French fries. So doing a lot of weird and different stuff with it. But it's when I go out to festivals or whatever, that's probably the thing I hear the most. People really like the food and that it's different.
So
Are there
good.
any? Yeah, the food. I tell you what, as much as and nobody's going to be shocked to listen to this on the show. Like most of your beer styles, your IPAs, it's not really what I go for. Like your coffee was a coffee cream ale.
Yeah.
Like that's every time I'm there, it's always on draft, so I'm always happy. Like I always have something to drink, so I'm perfectly fine. But the food there is just always so good. Is there any misconceptions you hear about Homes that you might want to like clear up? Like, do a lot of people think of something of you that's not necessarily true?
Oh, okay. That's a spicy question. Uh, Man, I don't know. I think you know, there's been some confusion over the SEMO thing. So I think people not understanding. Well, why don't you just call it Homes? So I think that trying to explain that is a little nuanced. I think the other reason why we did SEMO differently is like we're not really going to go into distribution for Homes, or like the home style of beer at least. So if we were to say, okay, Homes is going to start distributing, and you hear that and you're excited about it, and it's on draft, and then you get a Pilsner, like that kind of like is anticlimactic. If you know what we do and who we are as double IPAs or fruited sours or pastry stouts, and then we're only distributing a Pilsner, it doesn't really work that way, and I think that's another reason why we started a new brand, to kind of wipe the slate clean as to what we were going to do. I think outside of that, I think there I don't know, there's definitely sometimes there's a perception that I think we're a little like exclusionary with our beer, because we have had releases where we run out of things and there's not generally enough. I think people think because we're a semi-popular brewery in the state that we're just like enormous, but in reality, like, you know we do maybe 1,000 barrels a year, compared to Founders who's doing like 400,000 barrels a year. I think that's another thing. People have this perception that, like, we'll have an issue with the release or whatever, and they're like, you guys got to talk to your tech person, I'm like, who's our tech person? Like, I'm the tech person. What are you talking? Like, there's no tech person. So I think that there's often that perception. Yeah, I think that we try to be a little exclusionary, but at the end of the day, we are a very small brewery. Um, and we make what we can make, and we've got what we've got, and we're not trying to screw anybody over out of releases or anything like that. So there's been a little bit of people get spicy with that for sure, um, in the past. And then the beer fest thing too, I think there's been some perception, if you're not paying attention, I think with Nucleate, people think, well, we don't want to invite Michigan breweries, or we like kind of turn our nose up to Michigan breweries, and it's just like, no, there's just so many festivals that have Michigan breweries. This is an opportunity for people who to try stuff that they can't get in the state. And we worked with 3 brewers when we opened. Those are the Michigan breweries that come. If we invite one of our other friends, we have to invite all of our friends, because it just doesn't feel right. So that's kind of where we're at.
There was always and we've joked about this on the show a lot, but a misconception about homes, and there's a few of you guys in there. Speciation was definitely one of them as well. During the Michigan Craft Beer Festivals, when the tokens and tickets were starting to get to like 3, 4, and 5 tokens a beer.
Yeah.
And I think that's where a lot of people started to, at least from the casual perspective, started to get a little bit of a misconception on you guys. Regarding the beer releases, though, it is always impossible to appease everyone.
Yeah.
There's just absolute. I remember, RIP Ascension, when Ascension opened and they ran out of beer and they just closed, and they're like, sorry guys, we're not going to stay open without beer. Like that's antithetical to our entire process. So you can't overcommit because you don't want to dump bad, old product, and you can't undercommit. So like trying to find that happy medium, I think, is really, really hard. Is that whose decision is that in the facility? Is that you? Is that Tommy? A mixture of both? When you decide, like, all right, we're going to make this much, we're going to release it this way. Like, how do you go through that process?
Tommy's pretty hands off, so which is good. It's a lot of me and working with the team. I guess a little less of me now, and the team's kind of understands. It's just really feeling it out. It's such beer has become extremely seasonal. So you just know in January, February, things are going to fall off a cliff, and then it's going to get busy in the summer. So it's not an exact science. We definitely end up dumping stuff that's gotten too old. We've gotten pretty good at not happening. Early on, we were running out just because we couldn't make enough of it, and we couldn't make it fast enough. But now it's a conversation between a few of us, kind of tracking sales, understanding this style can go longer if it needs to, or a hoppy beer, we kind of know, hey, we shouldn't brew the biggest batch we can of this, because the shelf life on that, it's kind of born dying, and you got to make sure that the quality is still going to be good in 3 months, and if it's not, make it smaller, or we're going to have to end up dumping it. And then to speak to the token thing, that was always funny to me too. Yeah, people would get mad at me, and they're like, you guys are charging 3 tokens. Like, we don't decide how many tokens. Like, I'm not taking these tokens home and like paying our bills. These are like wood tokens that the Brewers Guild owns, and they're telling us we got to charge. Like, that's another thing. We get rated. We'll get an email from the Brewers Guild after every festival with a rating, like literally like A, B, C, like fail. So they're if you don't ask for the right amount of tokens or whatever, you get this rating. So that was always one where it's like, guys, like, I don't care. I wish there was no tokens. I don't want to be collecting tokens from people, but the guild says, well, this beer costs this much money, so you got to ask them to give you 2 tokens or 3 tokens, and we're like kind of begrudgingly following the rules on that.
Yeah, as of late, for the last 3 festivals I've been to, I haven't noticed any multi-token beers, and I've noticed a lot of the heavier duty beers still costing. There was like a quad, I think, that Dark Horse released, which was or a Belgian Strong that was like 18%. So I can only imagine like the money that went into all the different things that they did. you talked, and before we go into the fun questions, when you guys opened, you said 2017. I'm looking at my numbers right now. There were over 50 brewery openings in 2017.
Yeah.
It was a wild time where any brewery opening in 2017, 2018, and even 2019, it was an event. Like, you found out a brewery was opening and people were planning that weekend to go to that brewery for the first time.
Yeah.
We don't necessarily see that in 2024, but when you decided to open up Holmes campus, was there that huge thoroughfare fanfare with the new building, or was it like one day you were closed, the next day you were open, and that was it?
Yeah, we had a soft launch with family, and then we had a soft launch with industry people, and then we or I think members, because we had sold memberships before we got started, and then we opened to the public, and it was insane from that point forward. It was people, before we opened, people coming in and trying to sit at the bar so they can get a seat, and us asking them, like, you got to wait outside before we open. And yeah, no, we I don't think we there was something, a write-up in the paper, but it must have been like a week after. But we didn't have a big party or anything. We just said we're open. And you're right, I think a lot of people were like jumping around Michigan to all the new breweries that had opened, but I think there was just like pictures like kind of went out in some local news articles of our place, and it looked so different, and the description with the food being different, and then us saying we were going to specialize in sour and hoppy beer, specifically like New England hoppy beer. That was still kind of novel in Michigan. Before we opened, there was M43 dropped probably 3 or 4 months before we opened, and then Transient was doing Juices Loose, like a hazy double IPA on the west coast of the state, and there was still so many breweries that were just kind of like, hazy beer is they call it lazy IPA because like it was, I guess, I don't know, easy to make. I don't know. They were like, a lot of people were thumbing their nose up at it as like a, not a real thing. So I think people kind of knew we were doing the new stuff, and it was a new brewery, and it kind of looked fun and interesting. And so it was kind of crazy from the beginning.
All right. Well, Nick, thank you so much for joining us. As we end each and every show, we always want to ask just like a fun, uplifting question, and then give you the opportunity to talk a little bit about your brewery, where we can find your beer. And one of the things we really didn't touch on, because I'm going to start off with the ending question this week, was smooge. What the hell is a smooge? And why is it so thick?
Okay. Yeah, so that's a good question. So that was the first offshoot of that Holmes, did. We've done a few things since then with Simo, and then there's another brand called Cinch, that's like a canned vodka spritz that's 2.5% alcohol. But Smooge started in the summer of 2020. So if you could all go back to those days, it was like White Claw was going crazy. There was a lot of craft breweries that were trying to make hard seltzer, and it was all kind of the same, different versions of the same thing. People were getting flavor extracts from the same company and then trying to make their version of a White Claw. So we had kind of at that time gotten hooked up with Mortalis out of New York, upstate New York, and they were really doing those heavily fruited beers. And we worked with them and did a collab, and we really liked that style of beer. So we were talking about, should we or should we not be
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
All right, let's see if we can get him back in there.
me?
There we go.
Yes,
Hello.
we can hear
Sorry, I hit the mute button. I'm messing this up in every way possible. But we did this collab with Mortalis, and we were saying, everybody's doing a seltzer, should we do it? Like it feels like it's just kind of chasing something, but we kind of thought, well, maybe there's a way we can combine the heavily fruited thing with the gluten-free hard seltzer thing. And that's kind of where the idea came from. So we use just fruit puree and a high ABV hard seltzer, kind of gets watered down a little bit with fruit puree. So we started with I think like a mango raspberry was the first one, and we carbonated it just because like we made all we did was beer, and that's like what you carbonate beer. So we were just like, I guess we got to carbonate this. So when you carbonate something that thick, it ends up looking like it's like a living organism coming out of a can. It's pretty weird and crazy. And we just stuck with that. And then we did that first the mango raspberry, and we liked it. And I, you know, was into bartending and had been going to a lot of really high end cocktail bars that in the late teens, like the really high end cocktail scene was starting to grow in New York, and so we'd gone around a lot of places, and I just had really liked pina coladas, and I knew the coconut cream was kind of one of the ingredients there, and I was like, nobody really uses coconut cream in the production side of things, so we made a pina colada with one of our staff that we still have, Jacob Russell Meyer, who's like very engineer minded and very smart. So he kind of figured out how to do it, and I was a little bit more on the recipe development side of strawberry banana, which is our flagship, along with pina colada. That's also the flagship. I kind of came up with some of those recipes with some of the team, and we were like, this is weird, but people are probably going to like it. We put it in 16-ounce cans to start with, which is a lot of smooge to drink in one sitting. But that was what we served beer in, so that's what it was going to be. And we just put it on our website and didn't really say anything. And people were like, "What is this? Why are you guys making hard seltzer?" And they bought it. And then it like slowly crept into the craft beer culture a little bit. Obviously, the name, is easy to make fun of, and they were like, "This is a hard seltzer, but it's like a fruit shake," and then it just kind of took off from there. And we the next summer we were featured in the New York Times about it, and Bon Appetit, and Don't Drink Beer. Yeah, you guys know Don't Drink Beer
Yeah, we know.
was making fun of it on his Instagram account, and it was like it just kind of excelled very quickly, and it's just like it's not something to be taken very seriously. I think a lot of our brewer friends love it, because that was the one thing, like, are we going to lose credibility with the people we know in the industry? And they were like, but it's like there's a handful of people that are like, that's not what seltzer is. And it's like, what is there German purity laws for hard seltzer? Like, are we going to get up on our high horse for like alcoholic, it's just sugar and water with yeast. This isn't an art form. So we just kind of went with it, and it's been kind of a crazy ride. And we're, just past 4 years now. And we distribute in Michigan and California, and we send it international, and it's been a fun ride. We've made a bunch of different variations of it, but we sell it as a hard fruit smoothie, because the craft beer people get it. The general public do not. They're like, why is a hard seltzer $18 for a 4-pack of 12-ounce cans? They don't really understand. So we thought hard fruit smoothie is a better explanation as to what this thing is.
Rob, what's your final question?
I'm gonna go to the one I started with last week. What is the last board game or card game that you played?
I think I played Monopoly semi recently. It's just such a time commitment.
Yeah, that was a variation of that was the answer last time too.
Yeah.
Is that a strategy for breweries? Like, breweries are playing Monopoly like secretly to figure out how to game the system?
Yeah, I changed all the street names to brewery names so I could pretend that I'm just buying up all these companies.
I think there's at least a Beeropoly. Was there ever a Michigan Beeropoly?
That's funny. Not that I know of.
Yeah, I know there was at least a regular. Imagine, if you will, you're the what do they call them? The purples, or the first two ones. Like, yeah, you get added to Beeropoly, but you're the purples.
The dark blue ones, yeah.
Wendy, what's your final question?
Where did the name Holmes come from?
It's an acronym for the Great Lakes, which I actually didn't know until I moved here. But yeah, Huron, Ontario, Michigan, Erie, Superior. We're not like a super Great Lakes themed brewery or anything. It's just like a subtle name. And Tommy likes five letter names, so we've Dozer is like that, and Smooge is like that, and Cinch is like that. So we kind of the short, quick, punchy name. That we kind of like we didn't want to do like the full something brewing company. We wanted it to just be like, do you guys want to go to Holmes tonight? Just like a quick, simple thing that's very recognizable.
Makes sense. And real quick before Ken makes me stop asking questions,
That's all right.
how do we become part of the Bottle Club?
Okay, so we just launched it actually today for current Bottle Club members to renew. We will make it available, I believe, starting next Friday. So that's November. I don't have a calendar in front of me, but it'll be available next Friday. And we started with just a regular membership that get you like discounts on beers, and then we decided we were going to make a Bottle Club membership as well, and that we do special events around that where it's just Bottle Club members, and we've got one coming up in 2 weeks. We call it our Cool Ship Chill. It's basically when we fill our Cool Ship once a year, we have a party with the members to come out for the film. We have it at night. We fill the Cool Ship. We drink a bunch of mixed culture sour beer and put out a bunch of food. And there's giveaways and games. And we have a bunch of events like that throughout the year. And it's an awesome group of people that, kind of have known each other for the past 7 years that are kind of meeting up at all these events and kind of socializing, getting to know each other. It's a lot of fun.
That sounds awesome. The Cool Ship Phil, especially, that sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's a good time.
So I looked up actually the Brewopoly board, and New Holland is one of the purples.
Nice.
And I see it says Hoppy Trail IPA, so I can't figure out what the brewery is, but I recognize the Dragon's Milk logo. The
Christmas gift idea right there.
It looks like the boardwalk is the GABF medal.
Okay.
And it just says craftbeer.com.
Sure.
So I'm guessing that's the website that created it, and they didn't want to give themselves boardwalk, so they gave themselves Park Place.
Sure.
Holmes, Smooge, Troubadour, Simo, Cinch, whatever else I'm missing. Dozer. How do we find you? How do we get you? How do we get to you?
All right. So the Holmes Brewery Pub, the original location is on the west side of Ann Arbor, 2321 Jackson Ave. We're right by Zingerman's Roadhouse. Holmes campus is right down Jackson Avenue, about 1.5 miles away. You can get all of our products at both of those locations. Smooge and Simo is distributed throughout the state through M4 as our distributor. Dozer Coffee. You can go onto our website and buy bags of it. You can go to our Dozer Cafe at Holmes campus on the west side of Ann Arbor. But yeah, we are an Ann Arbor company, so that's where we're at. Come out and see us.
That is going to do it for episode 49 of the Michigan Craft Beer Series. You, of course, can find Holmes as well as all the other Michigan breweries, including their campus, at the Michigan Brewery Map app. Free for you to download on Android or iOS, mibeermap.com. Download it, find all the breweries, because you can make, even in that little corner by you, you've got Holmes, Wolverine, Hearsay, and then you go downtown and you got Blue Tractor, Jolly Pumpkin, Grizzly Peak.
Mothfire.
Oh my God, Mothfire. My favorite place to go, as much as I love your food, I love having food on the road, and you can't really eat like bulgogi fries while driving, but you can eat jerky over at Beer Camp.
Yeah, they're awesome.
So like that's always my first spot to go. Like if I want to go on a road trip, like I'll stop there, drink a beer, get jerky and cheese curds for the road, and then I'm on my trip.
Yeah.
Go check them out. Great beer. Go check out that coffee cream ale. Oh my God, it's so good. That's going to do it for us. Episode 49. We will be back next week with Storm Cloud. And no matter what you think of your beer, we think it's better on draft. Have a good night.
Cheers.
Cheers.